In 1987, a Texas man was convicted of murdering his wife. He spent the next 25 years behind bars, cut off from the world, eventually losing contact with his son.
Then finally, DNA evidence proved what Morton had claimed all along. He was innocent. Chris Cuomo has the story.
When I first got to Texas penitentiary, the first thing they do is they strip you naked and search you. As I was standing in line to get my boots, I noticed the guy in front of me. I counted 13 stab wounds in his back.
At just 32 years old, life as Michael Morton knew it was over. His wife gone, his family gone, his dreams gone. He was now a murderer, and his reality was prison, his new life goal to survive.
I am probably the personification of that old axiom, remember from school, about you can't prove a negative. It's just how do you prove you didn't do something?
Morton was trying to prove he didn't beat his wife Christine to death on August 13, 1986. There was no evidence placing him at the crime scene and no murder weapon. His 3-year-old son who witnessed the murder even told police, "Daddy didn't do it." But that statement and other details excluding Morton didn't come out until years later, while he remained locked up. How rough was it inside?
I never liked it, but I got used to it.
How long did it take you?
Probably 14 or 15 years.
14 or 15 years.
To get where I was used to it.
Are the first years the hardest?
The first years are hard just because it's a shock and it's new and it's constant adjustment, constant recalibrations.
Morton says life behind bars began to take away his sense of self. What he missed most was his son, Eric, who was growing up without him. What did your son mean to you? Not just as a son. Mm-hmm. He had to represent things to you, or ideas, over the course of this journey.
Yeah, my son, for me, he ended up being more than just my child. As I began losing pieces of my self, my reputation, my assets, most of my friends, as those things diminish, my son's importance rose, just, if nothing else, supply and demand.
And how were those visits?
To me, it was this, I'm a starving man looking at some food on the other side, and I'm just eating it up, and it's great, and it's wonderful. I've since found out, well, he's looking at me as this guy that really doesn't exist in his life, somebody he just sees once in a while.
As he started to grow up and wanted distance, how did you deal with that, and what ultimately did it lead to?
He suspended the visits, and eventually when I found out that he had changed his name legally and been adopted, few things are as powerful to a parent as the abject rejection of their child.
Morton always maintained his innocence, and on the outside, his attorneys hadn't given up on his case.
I don't keep the files of all the cases I've tried. I kept Michael's file. Michael's case was different. And on almost every level, particularly an emotional level with me.
I cross-examine people for a living. I have a pretty good sense of when somebody's lying to me. Not always, but most of the time. There was nothing about this man that didn't speak to actual innocence.
Finally, in 2004, progress. Attorneys for the Innocence Project began working with Morton, and they thought they had a chance. You say, I always thought that I would get out. What fueled the hope?
It's difficult for me to say whether it was just faith that I knew I was right and I wasn't guilty, that this would work out, or just that I didn't know how deep I was in.
Then came the breakthrough, a request for DNA testing on a piece of evidence that would eventually unravel the case against Morton. The existence of the bandana, what could be on the bandana, what the bandana meant. What was that in your life?
That bandana, in hindsight, was huge. Everything turned on that little square piece of cloth. It's only a big deal when you can step back and look at the whole picture and fight the impulse to say, oh my God, there it is.